option to suit United States convenience is at cross purposes with what India is trying to do. India's identity is linked with the Indian Ocean. And whatever we try to do, we try and join up the countries which are on the rim of the Indian Ocean. Now, if you don't recognize the Indian Ocean as an entity, and you say up to here is Pacific Command, this is Africa Command, this is Central Command, there is no Indian Ocean left. So at some point of time, we'll come into not actual conflict, but intellectual conflict on this issue.
Makes it difficult.
So I had suggested a few months ago that you might create an Indian Ocean Command and rearrange things so that Pacific goes, because eventually there will be a disagreement on this issue.
We did the best we could at the War College by creating an Indian Ocean Regional Studies Group. That's as far as we can do there, but we can't really solve the changing the UCP, how the Pentagon writ large changes things. But I think it's an issue, and the United States has to think about that as it furthers cooperation with India. As I said, it may be something that the U.S. looks at in terms of, and I don't know what the solution is, whether it's an Indian Ocean Command or whether it is that the Indian Ocean as a large organizing principle, is central to U.S.-Indian discussions about capacity building, and you have representatives from all the commands there and a rotating chair. There's lots of ways to try to get around the bureaucratic seams in the United States. But that's for folks here at State and Defense and out in Hawaii and down in Tampa to figure out.
Okay, the woman seated against the wall.
There's a gentleman there at the end.
Angie Hassinger, I'm a retired economist. Two of your speakers put a great deal of emphasis on the cooperation and the spur to this of the domestic industries in each country. Is this so important a component of the changing relations that if it gets snagged, as it might by problems of investing in India in manufacturing or some renewed U.S. technology export restrictions, could such snags impede the whole degree of emerging cooperation in maritime defense issues?
Who wants to take that one?
You want to answer that?
Sorry.
I don't think that is likely to happen, because all such situations are always win-win for both sides. Because we have tremendous advantage. We have cheap labor. We have innovative technologies in some areas. It's like outsourcing which has been going on. Even though there are a lot of protests in America that jobs are being taken away by Indians. But the fact is that when you outsource something to India, the company still makes a profit because of the operating costs, the labor costs and so on. So similarly, when we want to indigenize a certain piece of hardware, even if we borrow technology or buy technology from America and you sell it to us and we produce that piece of hardware, neither side will lose. We'll gain the technology and America will get paid for it. So I don't think the situation will ever come to a crunch where you feel threatened by us, by our desire to indigenize and your desire not to lose jobs. I'm sure people, the industrialists and economists and all, work out ways of overcoming these things. In spite of what the threatening noises made by American politicians during the last elections, for good reason, that we'll stop outsourcing or we'll penalize those who outsource. The number of outsourced jobs has not gone down because they make good economic sense for both sides. I don't understand the mechanics, but I'm told that no matter how much you outsource, you still will not lose. And we, of course, stand to gain every time an Indian sitting in Bangalore can do some job online. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
I was thinking more about problems of investing in India if you got caught in infrastructure constraints. Would that stop the cooperation?
No, I don't think so.
As far as I see it, I feel that a political base has been made for such investments because of the offset norms that are there. So in the sense that the government will be able to sell the entire norms and the new policies to the domestic businesses much better. So in that sense, I think that the momentum has been created and it should go through. And as far as infrastructure is concerned, I mean, there is a lot of improvement that is happening in India. I mean, even in the power sector, and if you see the highways and roads, so there are pretty good pockets of development where big industries are functioning. Like say Chennai is known as the Detroit of India. So in that sense, I think it should go through. And as Admiral Prakash has said, there is, as far as businesses are concerned, they are pro setting up industry over there because it benefits them in terms of lower costs and higher profits. Because I mean they don't mind making their armaments over there or anything else over there and then exporting it. Whether it's cars or whether it's armored vehicles or other armaments, it's the same thing. It's to do with profits, and the profitability over there is pretty high. So I think it should go through.
One other just sort of a macro point, which is I think generally U.S.-Indian relations have improved, across the board, across economic and political and military sectors, and you've begun to get a broad base of support for that in both countries. A particular disagreement on something, a specific point, whether it's an economic point or not, I don't think is sufficient to derail the broader momentum for cooperation. And I think, it's undergirded both by the profitability for businesses on both sides, and then here in the United States, also a growing, political support for this relationship, both in, in the administrations that I described and also in Congress, where the Indian caucus is, significantly larger and stronger than it has been in the past. And I think, a political force to be reckoned with.
Okay, all the way in the back.
Amit Pandya, the Stimson Center. I wanted to invite the panel, and actually particularly Admiral Prakash, to reflect a little bit, gaze into the crystal ball and think about next generation security threats and how navies might play a role in addressing them and how naval cooperation might. I work on commerce, environmental change, and resource issues in the Indian Ocean. And, while this discussion today has been very fruitful and very enlightening about sort of the traditional security questions, the traditional strategic questions of military cooperation, I've been struck that other than the reference to energy security, that even our reference to commerce has been sort of in passing. 80% of all international commerce moves on the oceans, a very significant proportion of that, increasing proportion of that now in the Indian Ocean. We look at environmental change, and we see that there are major issues of impact on coastal infrastructure. We certainly see the incidence of natural disasters, coastal inundation, etc., for all of which it seems to me navies, both by their presence and their technical capacity, may be the only institutions of governments that really have any capacity to address these issues on behalf of their national governments or on behalf of the international community. And then, as we sort of see the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea provisions on continental shelf come into force, in conjunction with increased technological capacity to exploit deep-sea resources, we begin to see that there is a very significant competition for undersea resources going on, leaving aside fisheries with the Australian find, the Brazilian find, etc. And I believe that we're at close to 50% now of energy supplies are now actually found from coastal sources or actually offshore sources. So I wonder if we can sort of look at that part of the terrain and ask to what extent, the missions of navies are going to evolve, in the Indian Ocean, if you like, but to what extent they're going to evolve, and what that does to questions of military cooperation between navies.
Good question.
Professor, I think you answered your own questions. Without a doubt, climate change is going to be our next big challenge. And they say that if the Indian Ocean rises by 2 inches, Maldives will disappear, and you've got to resettle the whole population of this small nation. Similarly, if the levels rise by a few feet, Bangladesh is going to lose huge amounts of land, and the population will be displaced, and it's going to be a massive crisis which can only be handled by cooperation, and of course navies will have an important role to play. And your point about undersea resources, I think, has already been illustrated by Russia sending a submarine down on the North Pole and planting a flag at the bottom of the competition is hotting up. Canada has started building icebreakers because the Russians have staked a claim. I think the US also has to think very seriously. So you're absolutely right. Perhaps we are too short-sighted, sitting in we're looking at immediate problems, but interstate conflicts are going to slowly disappear. Non-state actors are going to come up. If you see the latest military balance issued by IISS, there's a map which comes with it. It's a huge map, and it's the most outstanding feature of that map is the crisscrossing of drug lines. Amphetamines has got a different code, heroin has got a different code, and that's a feature that strikes you in the eye. And when you read the fine print, it says that drug trafficking has so many other implications. It's the source of all conflict, or much of conflict today. So I think non-state actors who indulge in drug trade are going to become another issue for us to handle. So you're absolutely right. Probably you'll have to organize another seminar to discuss the issues raised by the professor.
Yeah.
Same thing is happening in between Myanmar and Bangladesh also. They had a lot of differences over the undersea resources, and the navies were on the verge of clashing, and then I think it was sorted out.
I mean, one other point, which is I think what you listed in terms of some of the issues do dovetail very well actually with traditional Navy missions, and including some of those that I listed that both the U.S. and the Indian Navy have listed for missions, whether it's humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, maritime security operations, which address commerce. And then the other piece, too, is we've been talking Navy here, but I think we ought to talk maybe maritime forces, because a lot of these issues get to things that are really closer to Coast Guards. And again, the U.S. maritime strategy is a tri-service strategy, but for a lot of countries, they don't have a blue water navy. These are not about blue water navy issues. These are about maritime police and coast guards, and they are law enforcement issues in part. Whether that's drug smuggling or arms smuggling or what have you, in which, some capabilities and capacities of blue water navies apply, but at other times capacities and capabilities of brown water maritime forces with law enforcement writs. And the United States has a particular issue in terms of its Navy not being a law enforcement unit and having to carry, Coast Guard legal detachments on board to do certain missions because of, our particular, constitutional and legal background, but I think what you're talking about is a broad range of maritime forces and capabilities, and I think there, again, many of these issues you mentioned fall into very traditional mission sets for these types of forces.
Actually, if I may, though, I think what I was really asking, I didn't mean to answer my question, and if I did, I apologize. What I was really asking was, do you see signs that navies are in fact addressing, are preparing for these types of missions when they think about?
Oh,
absolutely.
Refer
Sure.
to whatever you said.
Yes, yeah, very. I mean, you can go get the strategies, and they
next year they'll refer to it more, and so on.
But it's a significant amount of ink spilled on those issues, and then I think follow up in terms of a development of capacity and capability on the part of both the U.S. and the Indian Navy, and we've seen demonstration of some of it, particularly with tsunami relief on the part of both the Indian and the U.S. Navy in the Indian Ocean.
Okay, question over here.
Wolf Gross, Northrop Grumman. Just a quick comment on the lady's question over on the other side. Cogent to the discussion of whether industrial cooperation between the two countries is sufficient or insufficient or whatever. One of the constraints that we're wrestling with right now is whether the government of India will allow more than 26% foreign direct investment in the defense industrial sector in India. The U.S. side would like to see 49%. So far, we're 26%. Doesn't give us much incentive to invest in the Indian defense sector.
That is right, but but as far as I see it, these norms I think were introduced quite a while back, and no investments have happened. But now, that's the reason. And the fact is that now I think there is an incentive to invest because if they need to win a contract, then they have to invest in tie up with an Indian firm. So it's been made into into a policy parameter. So I think there's no choice now. One will have to invest. So it has to go through. I mean, so I feel, I do see that the level of investments should go up. Now, as far as the norms are concerned, I don't see the 26% changing in a hurry, because there's a lot of it will need a lot of political backing, and there is a lot of anti-American anti-imperialist hysteria in India. So defense is a very critical sector. I mean, it's taken a lot of doing, and it's still not happened in the higher education, which is a soft sector. So I don't see. I mean, personally, I don't see it happening in the near future. But at the same time, I mean, the foreign vendors don't have a choice. They will need to get involved closely with Indian companies, in case that's going to be the contractual obligation. That's the way I see it.
Are there any other questions? Okay, well, let us wrap up. Why don't you join me in a round of applause for the three speakers today?